Why are some Muslim women treated unequally to their husbands? Because the Quran says that women are not equal to their husbands. This is how you know that the Quran that you hold in your hand today was written by a bunch of chauvinistic men, because Allah wouldn't have to do or say all of this. If you turn to Quran 2:226, it says, and I quote, "As to those women on whose part ye fear disloyalty and ill conduct, admonish them, refuse to share their beds, beat them." And just 2 verses later it states the following in Quran 2:228, and I quote, "And women shall have rights similar to the rights against them, according to what is equitable, but men have a degree over them." These are just 2 of several quotes showing that women really don't have a place in Islam other than to be a subject to her husband. Muslim women are made to wear a tent and face veil. Yet Quran 24:30-31 clearly states in that both men and women must be modest in their dress and in their behavior toward the opposite sex. Quran 24:30, "Say to the believing men that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty, that will make for greater purity for them, and Allah is well acquainted with all that they do." Quran 24:31, "And say to the believing women that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty, that they should not display their beauty and ornaments except what must ordinarily appear thereof." If Allah commanded men to guard their modesty first, then why is the law being enforced on the woman so much? It is obvious he was supposed to be an example for her in regards to be a good modest Muslim. Yet, only the women in Islam are expected to follow these laws wholeheartedly, while the men go around chasing all types of women and in some cases other men. So women are forced to adhere to this law, yet men aren't. If a woman is raped, the authorities blame the woman, saying that she enticed him and wasn't behaving correctly. They're put in back of the line in prayer, and it isn't written anywhere in the Quran. Muslim women are told they don't have to come on Friday to Jummah, which can't be verified by the Quran. When the Quran tells everyone to come to the worship of Allah, it doesn't specify gender. Quran 62:9. Many men even make their wives stay as home rather than go to the masjid to perform salat, prayer. Mortal men have now intervened on the soul of their wives because of ridiculous fanaticism. They're told they can't lead prayer and lead Islamic ceremonies, which can't be found in the Quran. Women are taught that they should be one out of a man's 4 choices of wives, or as many other wives as he can afford. Quran 4:3. They are not supposed to drive cars. They can't participate in commerce and business. They are not supposed to dance. They are not supposed to listen to any music or watch television programs. They have a strict diet on what you can and cannot eat, as if cows and chickens aren't just as filthy as pig. There are strict codes on sex. They tell you when to have sex, how to have sex, and what you can and can't do while having sex. Muslim women are told who they can befriend and who they can't. None of these restrictions can be found in the Quran. These are words of men, again called hadiths. This kind of treatment is a form of mental and physical enslavement. So, of course, with that kind of confinement, Muslim women appear to be devoted. Arabs have a philosophy of either do what I say or die. Women are enslaved, yet they're told the Prophet Muhammad liberated them. Other quotes in the Quran which deal with women and subjection. Quran 2:178, 2:226, 2:282, 2:223, 2:228, 2:230, 24:33, 3:14, 4:11, 4:34, 4:43, 24:31, 33:59. And why does your heaven have slaves called huri, Quran 2:25, that serve you? These are the pubescent maidens that the Quran talk about. If there are maidens for the men in paradise, then what purpose is the wife going to serve? As I stated earlier, Muslim women aren't serving any purpose on earth, and they are waiting on a heaven with no guarantees. And why is it Muslims can't drink wine on earth but they can drink wine in heaven? Quran 76:12-21, if there is milk in paradise, Quran 47:15, then there are cows, camels or goats in paradise. If there is honey in paradise, Quran 47:15, there are bees in paradise. Not to mention this paradise was copied from the Old Testament of the Bible in Deuteronomy 6:3, Exodus 3:8, Joel 3:18, Ezekiel 16:8-19, Daniel 5:2, and Amos 6:4. If there is water, rivers, in paradise, Quran 2:25, there are 2 elements of earth found there called hydrogen and oxygen. Get ready for this now. There is no hydrogen and oxygen outside of the Earth's atmosphere. That is why astronauts can't breathe out there without the aid of their spacesuits. So how can you have water or rivers in paradise, outer space? This may surprise some Muslims, but mules can't fly. In Islam, they tell the story of Muhammad's ascension, called the Isra, journey by night, where Muhammad was flying a mule to heaven. When he got there, he saw the dead people, namely the dead prophets. They are not in different floors or apartments and levels in heaven as taught by your hadith. According to the Mi'raj or Isra of Muhammad in the Quran as his ascension to the heaven, you find in the story of the Mishkatu el-Masabah, which is a whole story about Muhammad and Gabriel going into heaven and meeting different angels, knocking on doors. If there is wood in heaven, there are trees in heaven. On the first level he met Adam behind the door. On the second level behind the door he met John and Jesus. On the third level he met Joseph. On the fourth level he met Enoch. On the fifth level he met Aaron. On the sixth level he met Moses. On the seventh level he met Abraham. Then he was taken to a tree called Sidratul Muntaha. It had fruits, they were like water pots, and it had leaves like elephant ears. He saw 4 rivers there. 2 of the hidden and 2 of the manifest. How could he see it if they were hidden? Muhammad asked Gabriel, what are these? And Gabriel said, these 2 concealed rivers are in paradise, and the 2 manifest are the Nile and the Euphrates. Then he saw Baitul Mamar. After that a vessel full of wine grapes in heaven. Another vessel full of milk, cows or goats or camels in heaven? And another vessel full of honey, bees in heaven? Get ready for this now. You need a sun to make trees grow. There is a sun in your heaven? You need soil, dirt, that is earth. Is there an earth in your heaven? I can go on and on like this. Just realize that the religion of Islam needs some revisions and updates because the explanations that they are trying to pass off as the truth 1,400 years after the Quran simply don't make any sense. The Islam that is practiced today is just a watered-down version of Christianity. According to the Muslim world, there does exist an all-loving God who sits in heaven on his throne, Quran 2-255, who loves, cares, and protects them, which is the same concept that the Christians believe in. And I would like to state right here that the Muslim world is also under a hypnotic spell, thinking that the God of their Quran that they are worshipping is an all-loving, compassionate, merciful God, who cares for them and have a protection over them. However, their God does nothing but evil to them throughout the Quran. This is not to mention Muslims of this day and time. Millions of innocent Muslims throughout the Muslim world are dying unnecessarily, especially innocent women and children who are the first victims of war. Why is their God allowing different Muslim countries to be bombed and massacred? Where is your God's protection? Muslims are trapped in a time zone, and they better wake up to reality before it is too late. All you have to do is take a look around. There is not a day that goes by where some Muslim country isn't being bombed or bombing somebody. How can the Israelis say that their God Yahweh is greater than the Muslims' God Allah and vice versa, when the Israelis and the Palestinians, Muslims, are both dying every day? In Kashmir, India, Muslims were in opposition to political elections in their country because they want the country to stay under its same jurisdiction. The Kashmir Muslim separatists are killing would-be voters who show up at the polls. Some Muslims built a mosque on top of one of the Hindus' idols. This same mosque was torn down in India by the Hindus in 1992 AD. They just went there and took it apart. It says in Quran 22:38 that Allah will defend those who believe. Well, where was Allah then, when these so-called pagan Hindus were tearing apart their temple? On January 22, 1973 AD, 171 Nigerian Muslims were returning from Mecca when their airplane crashed. It was reported May 2, 1996 AD, while offering special prayers at Sobi Hill after Eid al-Adha, sacrificing a goat, 2 Nigerian Muslims were struck dead by lightning and 4 others were knocked unconscious. Another incident occurred on July 31, 1990 AD in Mecca, where 400 Muslims were killed in a riot. Isn't it said that if you take 1 step towards Allah, Allah will take 10 steps towards you? These were people making more than 1 step towards Allah during Hajj. They were completing their last pillar of faith, which is obligatory upon every Muslim to make once in their lives. Tell me, why did he allow those faithful Muslims to die a gruesome death in their so-called holy city? With all the bloodshed, Mecca has become an unholy city, another playground for the devil and his agents. On April 27, 1996 AD, Saudi Arabian television reported that this year's pilgrimage is proceeding peacefully. Of course they are trying to make this sound good. In the past, as I have just mentioned, Hajj was filled with tragedies and death. In Islam, Hajj is the last pillar of faith, and you are taught you should make Hajj once in your life before you die. To think that when you get there, which is supposed to be one of the most spiritual moments of your life, you may die because you may get caught in the crossfire of some political affairs that you know nothing about and have nothing to do with. My point being, if this place is sanctioned by you Allah as a holy or sacred place, then Mecca, Mina, Medina or any other of the holy cities shouldn't be filled with strife and frustration. Not to mention, there are Muslims in other countries such as Bosnia who are dying. This is how you know their religion is dead. Muslims made these big advertisements stating how over 175,000 had been killed and their terrible plight over in Bosnia. They spoke about how innocent people, innocent children who were being maimed, orphaned and starved. They were begging for help from their fellow Muslims. Why didn't your Allah help you? And what is really sad is that when the war finally ended, Muslims all over the world said, Alhamdulillah, Shukran Allah, that it is over, and truly believe that it was by the grace of Allah that the war ended. Instead, they should be asking why was there a war in the first place and why were those innocent children maimed, orphaned and starved? Were they not born in the service of Allah? Let me tell you something, if your loving God truly took care of his servants, then these kind of atrocities would not be able to happen to any Muslim anywhere at any time, by anyone. Why is that so hard to see? You all need to examine your concept of God. Don't you realize by now that all of the people who died or got hurt are from different religious beliefs? What was the religion of the estimated 400 Tanzanians who drowned to death when their boat capsized in Lake Victoria, Africa, May 19, 96 AD? Why would God allow an innocent person to die a tragic death? Some of them were Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Hindus or whatever religious belief they believed in. If God is responsible for all things, why did he allow religious people or good-hearted people to suffer in earthquakes and natural catastrophes? Isn't there a quote in the Bible and Quran, "Thou shalt not kill"? Exodus 20:13, Leviticus 22:28, Quran 5:95. So if God created the universe, who is responsible for the typhoons that are taking place? Who or what is it that's killing these people at random, by natural disasters as earthquakes? Quran 99:1, Matthew 24:7. And if you asked a Muslim what is their opinion about the church burnings that took place throughout the southern states of America, a Muslim is quick to say, they suffered because they weren't in their diet. Okay, if you really believe that, I'll give you that one. Now, let's take another look at the men who were making special prayers after Hajj. And I would like any Muslim to explain this one. Again, I will use the same story. It was reported May 2, 1996 AD, while offering special prayers, and I stress special prayers, at Sobi Hill after Ijui Adha, sacrificing a goat, 2 Nigerian Muslims were struck dead by lightning and 4 others were knocked unconscious. Taken from Reuters Hourly News. Lightning struck dead 2 Muslims praying on top of a rock in western Nigeria, newspaper said on Thursday. The Daily Times said the men had gone to offer special prayers at Sobi Hill after the Eid al-Adha Muslim feast at the weekend when a storm broke out. 2 men were killed instantly and 4 were knocked unconscious by the strike. Taking a look back in Islamic history, Hamza, who was one of Muhammad's most fierce warriors, was slain by Washi, who threw a javelin in his chest and even ate his liver and heart. Where was the help from Allah? Look at the Khulafa. Look at how each of them were murdered. Some were stabbed while making prayers to Allah, and others were stoned. Where was the help from Allah? Look at the abuse of the daughter of Muhammad, Fatima, and how everyone that Muhammad loved, from his father Abdullah, his mother Amina, his uncle Al-Abbas, were left to die. And the Ali al-Bayt were excommunicated out of their own land to live in the desert where they suffered and left dying. Where was the help from Allah? Even today, Anwar Sadat and other Muslims like him were brutally murdered. Where was the help from Allah? Colonel Gaddafi's daughter, a baby, killed. Where was their protection from Allah? The thousands of Ansars in the Sudan in the 1970s who were massacred and murdered. Where was the protection from Allah? Where is the help from Allah for those who make Hajj and never return home? Where was Allah for these people? Taken from Reuters Hourly News, 2 million Muslims celebrated the Eid al-Adha feast in Saudi Arabia today at the end of a pilgrimage in which 343 people died when a fire burned their camp. Huge crowds participated in early Eid prayers at the Grand Mosque in Mecca, while others made their way back to Mina, 7 miles away, site of the blaze that also injured 1,290. As officials struggled to identify the dead, laborers finished erecting new tents to house pilgrims left without shelter after the inferno consumed 70,000 tents. The final ritual of the Hajj climaxed yesterday at Mount Arafat, where Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad gave his last sermon 14 centuries ago. Was this an act of God, or was it bad luck? Or was it Mother Nature, which is often mistaken as God, Allah, or whatever name you want to call him? Muslims will tell you it is a blessing to die in the way of Allah. And that is nothing but a convenient cop-out. Muslims have a unique methodology for covering up their mistakes. The Quran promises you youth, maturity, and old age. Shouldn't you get a fair shot at life, if this is what the Quran promises? However, that is disrupted and cut off, in most cases abruptly, because for whatever reason. Muslims say that men are martyred for Allah. Why matter them? Why not let them live and continue in the service of Allah? If you take a Bible situation, take for instance, the Jacob story in the Bible, it is the same concept. Was it really necessary for God to put Jacob through all those emotional changes? First, in Genesis 37:34, when Jacob thought his son Joseph was dead, he was actually living in Egypt under the Pharaoh. Then again, When his son Benjamin was taken from him, Genesis 42:36, 45:12-13. Why mess with people's minds? The same incidences occur in the Quran. The stories are just a little different. The following quote is one that Muslims love to use as a justification for why they are suffering. Quran 22:38, Verily God will defend, from ill, those who believe. Verily, God loveth not any that is a traitor to faith, or shows ingratitude. And Muslims claim that their God is the all-knowing and all-wise. Quran 27:6, 27:78. If God already knows what's in your heart, then there is no need for him to make any demands from you, because God would know if you are sincere or not. Do you understand? If you say I want to see the face of Allah, what would a Muslim call you? A blasphemer. Then if you say, well, who is Allah? They'll say, well brother, Allah is beyond your comprehension. So, why am I praying to him? Does he know my inner feelings? This is supposed to be God you know. Does your God according to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam know your inner feelings? Yes or no? According to them, he knows everything you feel. So, why do I have to pray? In Islam, you are taught that you are judged by your intentions, not your actions, so doesn't he know that I want to pray? And in knowing that I want to pray, haven't I indeed prayed? Does it mean I have to pray for a minute or an hour or 2 hours? Wouldn't the split second that you decide to give thanks to the Almighty for the calm that sits in front of you, wouldn't that be prayer? Wouldn't he know that? So, why would you have to make wudu, ablution, and call out Allahu Akbar, and fall to your face, or sit in a masjid? Why would you have to do all of that, if your Heavenly Father knows? When you take a look at Islam, Muslims are also caught in a 1,400-year time zone. You're trying to live back 1,400 years missing reality, ignoring advancement as well as developments. You are pretending that you don't see all of these scientific discoveries and archaeological findings. You're doing what the people did 1,400 years ago. However, in reality, it's their way of life, meaning desert Arabs of 1,400 years ago who lived in the Arabian Peninsula. Now here you are living in America in the 20th century like you're in some kind of movie setting out of the Arabian Nights. The sooner you let go to the past and that way of life and catch up with time, the better off you're going to be. You're caught back there 1,400 years and won't progress. Whether you know it or not, you stopped functioning. You base everything on events that took place around 1,400 years ago, and you are not progressing. However, the Imam whom you put your faith in keeps you bound to the mosque because he keeps saying we are progressing. However, what they don't tell you is that it is impossible to progress with a 1,400-year-old religion, and if you think your Imam doesn't know this, then you are fooling yourselves. There isn't much a 1,400-year-old religion can do for you in 2024 AD, the state we are in today. Religion is an escape from reality and the tool of the weak. What I mean by this is religion keeps you aspiring for a place called heaven which is intangible. And there are no guarantees that you are going there. And what is even more heartbreaking is that you will have to die or you will have to go through trials and tribulations before you can go there. Take a look around, millionaires and successful people are not religious people. Religious fanatics pretend that they don't see what is going on in the world around them, especially in the Islamic faith where people don't have running water. Muslims are pretending that they don't see all of these scientific discoveries and archaeological findings. The discovery of new planets totally eliminates religion because it teaches that there are only 9 planets and Earth has the only life forms. This is one level of the Muslim world, the poor level. The reason why I say the poor level is because there are some Muslim scientists who are well aware of new discoveries they aren't going to tell the average person about it. There was a Muslim astronaut, Prince Sultan bin Salman bin Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia, who went to space. He must have a certain amount of belief in the scientific world in order to be an astronaut, because there are years of study and training that you have to go through before become an astronaut. With different discoveries happening all of the time, proving that there is life on other planets, etc. There is no way that Prince Sultan bin Salman bin Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia could possibly remain totally loyal to his religious belief. Satellites are going up into outer space all of the time and showing evidence that there is life, sims, moons, etc., that the Quran does not talk about. When I say life, I am not necessarily talking about human life. Humans are very egotistical to think that they are the only life form. Water, amoeba and fungi are all life forms as well. I have had many conversations with Muslims on America Online, and it is amazing how narrow-minded Muslims are. They make statements that are as outdated as the Quran itself. In a discussion with a Muslim on October 5, 1997 AD, one of these religious fanatics stated the following: the Quran was revealed more than 1,400 years ago. The human mind at that time could not even think of anything more than planet Earth. There are, However, numerous verses in the Quran that refer to Allah as the Lord of the worlds, indicating the presence of worlds other than the planet Earth. In fact, the very first verse of the Quran gives this testimony. Muslims are wrong as usual. The Sumerian tablets have pictures of the universe, and it has a sun in the middle and stars and planets surrounding it showing 12 planets. And scientists have just acknowledged Europa as a planet and Titan as a planet. The Egyptians kept records of the stars called Sothis known as Sirius and the Dogons of Mali. West Africa have pictures of the sixth star Orion that dated back over 10,000 years. Many cultures have recorded the sun, the moon, the stars, planets, the alignments predicting eclipses for thousands of years before the Quran. The Aztecs and the Mayans of America 5,000 years ago have star maps. The Stonehenge of the Druids is a star clock based on the summer and winter solstice. Astronomers today have found life on the planet Mars. Can Muslims show you that in their Quran? No. Humans went to the moon and the Quran says you can't because in Quran 31:26 it says that to Allah belong all things in heaven and earth. The Quran 13:8 says that Allah knows what is in the wombs of the mother. So do gynecologists. Now there are sonograms showing women what is in their womb and what sex the child will before it is born. The doctors have just become your Allah. Scientists are making human tissues, skin, in the Arabic it's bashran and yilt, as in leather skin. Scientists are creating them now as well as artificial plasma, that is blood. Quran 23:21 says that the cow produces milk in its stomach. Cows do not produce milk in their batna, stomach. Their milk is produced in their udders. See, the reason why your Quran wasn't put together until after Muhammad and many of the real chapters were thrown away or discarded and replaced by others was because they traveled to different places, to other people's ancient records and put it inside of their book and didn't even do it right. And now it is backfiring because we are now in the computer age. Then there are the simple common sense facts in life. Read this hadith and determine for yourself just how outdated Islam and their teachings are. Narrated Abu Hurairah, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, created Adam and his height was 60 cubits. When he created him, he said to him, go and greet that group of angels, and listen to their reply, for it will be your greeting, salutation, of your offspring. So, Adam said, to the angels, Assalamu alaikum. La. Peace be upon you. The angels replied, saying, Assalamu alayka wa rahmatullahi, peace and Allah's mercy be upon you. Thus the angels added to Adam's salutation the expression, wa rahmatullahi. Any person who will enter paradise will resemble Adam, in appearance and figure. Do you have any idea how tall you just said Adam was? Tell them in feet that's a real joke and you people really believe this and call us nuts. Where are his big bones? Don't make me laugh, you guys are so funny. Cubit, an ancient unit of linear measure, originally equal to the length of the forearm from the tip of the middle finger to the elbow, or about 17 to 22 inches, 43 to 56 centimeters. Middle English cubit, from Latin cubitum, cubit, elbow, okay, that would be 60 elbow lengths, which they say is about 17 inches, 60 times 17 equals 10-20 inches, which equal 85 feet approximately, and if it was 22 inches, it would be 60 times 22 equals 13-20 inches, which would make him 110 feet tall and the Quran doesn't record this, the Torah doesn't record it, the Zabur, Psalms, doesn't record it, the Injil, Revelation, doesn't record it, nowhere is this found in anybody's scriptures. This is something you guys just made up. It is done by some of your people, and it is literally ridiculous. The Quran is totally obsolete when it comes to scientific facts. For instance, Quran 36:40 says, and I quote, Quran 36:40, it is not permitted to the sun to catch up the moon, nor can the night outstrip the day. Each, just, swims along in its own orbit, according to law. All you have to do is look up at the sky and you can see that it is possible for the moon and the sun to be in the sky at the same time. It happens as a normal day experience, and when you see a solar eclipse, the sun and the moon are seen at the same time. They have caught up to each other. If Muslims can't explain or comprehend something as simple as this, then seeing the moon move across the sun and covering it, sounds crazy. Something else I would like to point out is that Quran 21:33 states that Allah created the moon. This is also incorrect information. It is He who created, Khalaq, the night and day, and the sun, Shams, and the moon, Qamar, all, the celestial bodies, swim along, each in its rounded course. In the Torah it also states that God made a greater light and a lesser light, that lesser light being the moon. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. In many of my scrolls including the Holy Tablets in chapter 3 I have talked about the moon, which had many names and birth date records, breaking away from the earth and became a satellite of the earth. I even explained in chapter 1, tablet 6 verses 6, 12 that there was life on the moon in different life forms. Of course, everybody called me crazy. So with most of the waters dried on the moon, because its waters are on Earth, she keeps pulling on the waters of this planet. Sheshki was first covered with life and vegetation, just like Earth today. For instance, there are even certain radioactive elements found deep in the Earth, that are found in the crust of the moon. Scientists are now saying they think the moon is 4 billion years old and possibly broke away from the Earth. In the New York Times, Friday, March 6, 1998 edition states, and I quote, "Scientists say they believe that the moon was created 4 billion years ago, possibly from debris thrown into space from the collision of a young Earth with a large meteor or comet. The moon formed as a dry body, many believe, and any water present would have come from its bombardment by comets. The only water that would remain on the airless moon would have to be hidden in craters in places shielded from sunlight, which would evaporate any moisture." NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, confirmed water on the moon on the North and South Poles on March 5, 1998 AD. This is just confirmation of what I have been saying for years. No longer can you call me crazy, unless you call the whole world crazy, because as I have said before, facts support facts. In Quran 1886 it states the sun sets. It is a scientific fact that the planet Earth revolves around the sun, and what we see as the sun setting or sun rising in the horizon is due to the orbits of both. Ask Muslims to explain this scientific error in the Quran. Quran 1886, until, when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it set in a spring of murky water, near it he found a people. We said, O Du al-Qarnayn, thou hast authority, either to punish them, or to treat them with kindness. Ignoring this, they continue on blindly. Muslims will pretend they follow the Prophet Muhammad to the letter, however, they are not eating what the Prophet Muhammad ate. Right in their own hadith it tells them what his diet consisted of, and it definitely was not pizza and soda. Just go to Disney World in Orlando, Florida, or Disneyland in California, you will see them walking around with veils and beards and working there while indulging in Western world pastimes and games by the thousands. They have given themselves over to what they call the Great Shaitan. Ask these hypocrites, if Muslim countries are so wonderful and this country so wicked, why are the majority of their citizens over here in America? Muslims living in the country make up all kinds of excuses why they live here. According to one group, Masjid Al-Fajr in Indianapolis, Indiana, living in the Western Hemisphere of the world is both challenging and educational for Muslim families, yet it leaves the family vulnerable to the ills of the environment they live in. This makes it more difficult for the Islamic identity to be maintained. The result is an urgent need to take realistic approach to survive the test, as well as to build a growing and stable Islamic foundation that will preserve the Muslims' heritage and the teachings of Islam. The Muslim world is also partaking in European, French and Italian lifestyles. Arab women are taking off their traditional garb and trading them in for clothes that are revealing, which is something that was unheard of during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Yet they still claim to be righteous Muslims. This is hypocrisy, and they don't follow the Quran. They want to pretend that cigarettes and cigars and pipes and chewing tobacco does not contain nicotine and is not a narcotic. It is all over the media, and it is being admitted by its manufacturers that it is indeed a drug, an addictive drug. However, Muslims will come out of Salat al-Jumu'ah on Friday and go right outside the masjid and light a cigarette on a staircase or a doorway of Baytul Allah, House of Allah, and make excuses to smoke cigarettes, which is and has been proven to date to be an addictive narcotic. They will tell you that it only applies to wine. The word for wine found in the Quran is nabiyath, but the word used is kamri, for the same word for kimar, or veil or block. This word applies to anything that blocks or dulls the intellect as cigarettes do as a narcotic. This is just one of the many hypocrisies. And all of King Hussein's sons and daughters, who are all supposed to be Muslims, have taken on Western ways. His first wife has dyed her hair blonde and wears Western clothes. Their latest fads are racing cars and many other deadly vices. As a matter of fact, right in the holy city of Mecca, can you believe that there is a McDonald's, which is an American restaurant? There was no such thing as McDonald's during Muhammad's time. Everybody knows that McDonald's food is not of the best quality. Quran 2-219, they ask thee concerning wine and gambling, say, in them is great sin and some profit, for men, but the sin is greater than the profit. They ask thee how much they are to spend, say, what is beyond your needs? Thus doth God make clear to you his signs, in order that ye may consider. You also have the other levels of Muslims that are living large and doing everything that the Quran forbids them to do. They like to play Muslim. There were no Rolex watches, fancy perfumes or Italian loafers in Muhammad's time. These are the same people that allow their other Muslim brothers and sisters to starve to death. These same Muslims will talk about all of the scandals that Christians are in when they are caught up in scandals all of the time, you just don't hear about it. When they are around Muslims, they pretend they are Muslim. However, when they are not around Muslims, they go and sit with presidents of other countries which they claim they hate, and let them know that they are with them, let them build their military, control their economy, and they even come out of their garb. They are a bunch of hypocrites who live double lives, Quran 2:14. So, here you have Islam from both sides. The poor who are in the dark and locked in their tunnel vision, and the rich who are using their religion to manipulate the poor. You tell me, why is your Allah letting this happen? When the AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, epidemic was first unmasked through the media to the world, women, and children of all ages, races and religions started getting the disease. People soon realized that the AIDS virus does not discriminate. Muslims and other religious groups were walking around thinking they were exempt from getting the AIDS virus and that they had some type of special protection from their God Allah. However, this has been proven false also, because millions of Muslim men, women, and children worldwide have been infected and even died of this deadly disease and were not homosexuals, drug users, or even exposed to this green monkey. So, why are Muslims getting the AIDS virus? Where is their protection from their God Allah, or as Muhammad would say, Madanez Riyahi? Why is your Allah not protecting his people from this deadly disease? And don't try and go the metaphysical route and say these Muslims who died from the AIDS virus were not true believers, because Muslim children die every day from AIDS and they are not even at the age of wrongdoing or evil, and in most cases, the children were born Muslim. So how do you explain that? Muslims truly thought they were exempt from getting the AIDS virus. However, I am here to inform you that if you take a look around, you will plainly see that this is simply not true. In an article entitled, AIDS in the Ummah of Muhammad, PBUH, talks about AIDS in the Muslim community. The article states, the global Muslim community has been affected by and infected with HIV, although little if anything has been written on the topic. In retrospect, as with other ecumenical communities, the Muslim community was convinced in the early 1980s that this pandemic would pass them by. Now that the global AIDS pandemic enters its second decade of devastation, this community no longer has the luxury of holding on to that illusion. Primary Islamic countries were especially convinced that as long as they kept to their Islamic principles, HIV infection would be non-existent or kept to a minimum. The Global AIDS Policy Coalition reported during the 10th International Conference in Japan that as of January 1994, the HIV infections rate in countries with substantial Muslim populations continues to rise. In sub-Sahara Africa, there are 15.5 million HIV-positive adults, and 1.99 million children. In the southeastern Mediterranean, which includes Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Yemen, Jordan, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, there are 58,000 HIV-positive adults and 2,000 children. These statistics do not include the HIV infection rates for countries with Muslim populations in other geographic areas such as Southeast Asia, where Bangladesh, the Philippines and Malaysia are located, nor the Caribbean region. The article goes on to say that nationally there are approximately 6 million Muslims, with New York State having the highest concentration of immigrant and indigenous Muslims. However, this statistic does not reflect the dramatic increase in New York City among the immigrant Muslim communities currently settling in central Harlem, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Astoria, Rockaway and Jackson Heights. Nor does it reflect the rapid acceptance of Islam among the Moorish community, which is inclusive of the Latino community. So, as you can plainly see from the statistics, Muslims are catching hell just like any other homosexual, heterosexual, drug user, or green monkey from the HIV infection. Not to mention, more than half of these Islamic countries mentioned earlier are too poor to even get treatment for this sickness. So I ask again to Muslims, where is the help of your God? Why is he allowing his devoted Muslims to be infected with the AIDS virus?